Hi, and welcome to the End Begins Ministry. The Prophet here. Um, so, before we get started today, let me introduce you to this book here. It's on Amazon already. How to be Assured of Your Salvation, The Mark of the Beast, The Abomination of Desolation, and the Final Tribulation. So, you can get it on Amazon. I'm still working on getting it into an ebook. I do need help with that. Anybody who knows how to work that kind of magic, I would appreciate the help. You can email me at theendbeginsministry@yahoo.com. It's one word, or call me or text me. And it's urgent to get that done because a lot of people these days consume books through ebooks instead of a hard copy. And I will compensate for the help. And if you want to know what's in the book, you can go to the previous segment before this one where I briefly talk about the book, what's in it, the titles that are in the back of the book. So you can find that in there. But it's on Amazon already, and you can get it there if you need a copy. So today, though, I want to talk about Iran versus Israel, this war that just happened a few weeks ago, and the implications of World War III, or the relationship of that war or its relation to World War III. I'll talk about that, and then I want to touch on the biblical Jewish history, and then I want to touch on the root and cause for this Israel versus Iran war, and then I'll talk about a prophecy that's being fulfilled now, currently, and also I want to talk about Daniel 9 and how it relates to the current war and World War III. So there's a lot to cover. Basically 5 different things, or 5 related things, but slightly different. So the first one. Now, before I get started, let me say this. If you are a Jew or a Muslim or Palestinian or Christian or evangelical or Seventh-day Adventist or Catholic, your emotions, or whatever you've been taught and whatever you've heard in the past about Israel, Iran, all these things, World War III, forget all that. Put it aside for now so that the information you will hear, you don't filter it through the stuff that you heard previously, so you can understand things accurately for today. Okay, now, first, Iran versus Israel. We saw the news, we heard everything. We were told that Israel preemptively attacked Iran because they were fearing that Iran was running a nuclear program that involves nuclear weapons, and then Israel felt that they might get attacked. So they preemptively attacked Iran and killed a lot of cabinet ministers, some really important political figures in Iran. And they also bombed the nuclear facilities there, including the capital, Tehran, of Iran. And so then Iran retaliated in the process, and they also bombed Israel and bombed Tel Aviv, including the Mossad building, the CIA of Israel. And then there was a ceasefire, and that's what the news told us, and that's what we saw. Now, there are things that are not told in the news media that are relevant. So number one is Iran had only one defense system, aerial defense system, and the GPS of that system is controlled by the US military. So during this war, that GPS system was disabled. And so Iran was left wide open aerially. Now, Israel, on the other hand, they had 5 levels of aerial defense. They had the Patriot, which is the Iron Dome. They had David Sling. They had Arrow 3. They had Jordan intercept some of the missiles from Iran, and then they also had the Navy, U.S. Navy from the sea intercepting some of these missiles from Iran. Now, the thing is, Iran sent so many missiles that it overwhelmed all 5 defense systems that Israel had, and they just bombarded Israel, and Tel Aviv was starting to look like Gaza. And so Israel then called the ceasefire because they couldn't take the heat no more. Now, Iran had no interest in the war in the first place, so that's why they agreed to the ceasefire. So, but now both sides are in their relative corners getting ready for round 2. It's not over yet. And that round 2 is what will bring us to World War III. Now, what happened with Iran is because they learned how not to trust the GPS system that is used by the US military, controlled by the US military. So they then scraped it after this 12-day war, and they opted to go with the Chinese GPS system, which is called Beidou, BDS. And so now Iran is supported by China and Russia, and they're using Chinese weaponry and systems. And so they won't be caught off guard the next time around. Now, what Israel was hoping for when they started this war, Israel is like that Chihuahua, right? That Chihuahua that has the friend who's a Rottweiler. And the Chihuahua started a fight with a pit bull, Iran, hoping that the Rottweiler would jump in and continue the fight on behalf of the Chihuahua. But the pit bull didn't feel like fighting. I mean, the Rottweiler didn't feel like fighting this time, because the Rottweiler has fought so many wars on behalf of the Chihuahua. And so this time the Rottweiler was just like, we're going to send 1 or 2, 3 bombs and then we're done. We're getting out of this. And so then the Chihuahua was like, yeah, this pit bull I can't take no more, so I'm going to call a ceasefire. And so that's what happened, and that's where we are now with the ceasefire situation. But the next time around, when these two go at it, is going to be World War III, and that's going to be here in a couple of years, probably about 2027. So it's going to be an all-out war when they go at it again. Now, that's the first thing, Israel versus Iran, and the implications of World War III. I'll get on to how World War III is going to come about in a little bit. Now, let's touch on the Jewish history aspect of things, because also this has an effect in the whole thing, that there's some folks that perceive themselves to be Jews and that they were given this land, and then now they're threatened. But let's look at the truth of the matter. We go to the Bible, right? So the history of the Jews and the history of the land of Judea itself. So when we go to the Bible, looking at the history of the people themselves. So after the flood, we have Noah and he has 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Japheth is the Caucasian. He goes to Russia and Europe. And you have Shem, who is an Akkadian Arab, and he goes to Mesopotamia, to Iraq and Iran, and Nineveh, that whole area in the Euphrates. And then you have Ham, the Negro, who goes down to Canaan, Judea, and Africa. So this is the primary location of the 3 sons of Noah. And so then Canaan, the son of Ham, is there in the land of Judea. That's where he settles, the Negro. Now God tells Abraham, the Akkadian Arab, in Iraq, ancient Babylon, he says, go over to the Negro land in Canaan and, settle over there. I'm going to give you that land. So Abraham takes all his family. They go over there. Abraham has Isaac, who then has Jacob. Jacob has 12 sons. One of them is Judah. And that's where the name Jew comes from, the tribe of Judah. Now, Judah is Akkadian Arab. When he gets to Canaan, when he's there in Canaan from his descendants, from his ancestors. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So Judah sees this beautiful black woman named Tamar, Tamar of Timnah, in the land of Canaan. And so this is a black woman. And so they get together and have Perez. Now, when they have Perez, then they go to Egypt. In Egypt, the 12 tribes of Jacob, they intermingle with the Egyptians. Blackness is all over the place. It's Negrofied. Everything is Negrofied. So they come out from there. They come back to the land of Canaan. When they get in there, there's a city named Jericho. When they get to that city, it's Canaanites. Jericho was a Canaanite city. They're all Negroes. And they get there, and Salmon, he gets together with Rahab the prostitute. So, more Negro babies. And so then, eventually, down the line, we find another black woman named Ruth, a Moabite. So, another Negro baby in the mix. David is a Negro Arab. Solomon is a Negro Arab. In fact, Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah, the Hittites. So, Hittites were part of the Canaanite tribes, and they were Negro. So, even the Shulamite woman that Solomon is fond of, she says, God cooked me a little longer and I came out very dark. I'm dark-skinned, I'm black, I'm Negro. And Solomon says, girl, I like you. You're looking good. So they get together. So you see that in the history of the Bible, in the history itself of the lineage of Judah, the only people you see is the Arab and the Negro. It's Negro Arab, black Arab, all the way down, even to the time of Jesus the Christ, Yeshua himself. So they're all Negro Arabs in the land. The Jew, the genetic Jew, is Negro Arab, the Palestinian, basically. So ethnically, historically, genetically, the true Jew is Negro Arab. It's impossible. It's impossible for the Jew to be white Caucasian. It's absolutely impossible. It is a lie to say that a Jew is a Caucasian white man or white woman or white child. So the true Jew can only and is only a Negro Arab, which is the Palestinian. The Palestinian bloodline, you can trace it back all the way to Jesus the Christ, the bloodline of the present-day Palestinians in Gaza that are being massacred. You trace it all the way back to Jesus the Christ, Yeshua himself, all the way back to Solomon. They're all black Arabs, Negro Arabs, King David, all the way to Judah himself, the son of Jacob, the son of Isaac, the son of Abraham, the son of Terah, the son of Nahor, the son of Serug, the son of Ru, the Chinese, the son of Peleg, the son of Eber, the son of Selah, the son of Aphaxad, and the son of Shem, the son of Noah. So that's the bloodline of the present day Palestinians. There is no European blood in there. And they're the true Jews. There's no European blood. There's no Caucasian bloodline in there anywhere. So the present day folks who call themselves Jews over in Israel, they're lying. They're not Jews. They're just white European folks. And they're not Israelites. They're Zionists. There's a difference. Now, the history of the land itself. So these folks come around today and they tell us in Genesis chapter 12, God said, hey, we give you the land. And then later in the Bible, they say, oh, because we're being cast to different lands, God is returning us today. All of that is a lie. All of that is a lie. So When we look at the scripture itself, excuse me, in Genesis 12, they usually will quote verse 3 and leave out the rest from the first verse. When you read the full context of the Bible there, the promise is made to Abraham. God says, leave your land, go to the Negro land, and I give it to you. And this promise, whoever blesses you, I'll bless him. Whoever curses you, I will curse him. This promise, number one, does not go to Isaac. Okay. The seed that is named as a blessing or inheritor of that blessing is none other than Yeshua the Christ, Jesus the Christ. And Paul in the New Testament explains this. Because that promise is based on righteousness, it's not based on genetics. It is based on righteousness. So therefore, we go to the next scripture again in Deuteronomy chapter 30, when they are in the wilderness. The descendants, the bloodline descendants of Abraham, the Israelites. God says to them, if you disobey, I will send you away. If you stay faithful, you will stay in the land. That was a conditional promise. And so also here, they usually read from verse 3 to verse 5. They omit verse 1 and 2 and also verse 6, which give the full context of that. God doesn't just say, hey, I will bring you back. No, he says, if, meaning it's conditional. Now, we go down again in history, we find the prophet Isaiah, where we find the prophecy of the Messiah, that the Messiah will come and establish an earthly kingdom, and then all the nations will come and worship in Jerusalem. This is a Jewish prophecy that has been standing for a long, long time. Now, what the present fake European Jews are doing is they are reversing this prophecy in the sense that the prophecy in Isaiah, it says the Messiah will come first and then establish a righteous kingdom, which then, after that, the Jews will return, the people of God will return to the land after the Messiah is there. But what the Zionists are doing is they are returning first and then they want their Messiah, the Antichrist, to come after they are already there. But that's not what Isaiah says. Isaiah says the Messiah comes first, then the people. But the Zionists are saying, no, the people are going there first, and then the Messiah will come. So, backwards again, because they're fake folks. Now, the next scripture that's usually quoted is Jeremiah 30 and verse 3. So that, God says, I will return you. Now, Jeremiah prophesies around 629 to about 580 BC. And he also writes the book of Lamentations there when the people are in exile in Babylon. That's the full context of Jeremiah there. In fact, you read starting from chapter 29, not just chapter 30. And when you read there, you find that Jeremiah is writing a letter. Okay, he's writing a letter to the exiles in Babylon to promise them a restoration back to the land of Judea. So that's the full context. And that was fulfilled because when Cyrus came there, he freed those Jews to return to the land of Canaan. And also the Artaxerxes decree in 457, that also fulfilled the prophecy and God returned them. So that when Jesus came, there were Jews there in the land, right? So because the restoration had happened. So there's no other restoration or return that has to happen. All of them have been fulfilled. In fact, also Ezekiel, along with Jeremiah, Ezekiel chapter 36, verse 24. So Ezekiel was a contemporary of Jeremiah at the very same time, 580 BC, around that time. Both of them talking about the return of the exiles from Babylon, and that was fulfilled. So there is no other fulfillment of a return that is promised by God. Now, when Jesus comes, 4 BC to 27 AD, to about 30 AD. So when Jesus comes, he then says to the folks, the genetic lineage, the Jews, he says to them, now your house is left to you desolate. I tried to gather you as a hen gathers her chicks, but you wouldn't want to come to me. You didn't want to come to me. And so now there's a divorce that's happening. So therefore, then Jesus assigns the mission to the 12 disciples, including Paul, who would be the 13th. They are then tasked with taking the gospel of Jesus Christ to the rest of the world, because the Jews as a nation, they failed that task, as per the prophecy in Daniel chapter 9. Now, we can get to that later. So let's move on. So then we see that these fake European Zionists who call themselves Jews, they are twisting things to fit their narrative, and they are lying to everybody. God has never promised them anything. In fact, most of them are Satanists and most of them are atheists. They have nothing to do with Yahweh. So when we look then at the history of the land itself, we can go back to Noah with the 3 sons, right? Abraham, he comes over. The promise of righteousness is bestowed onto Abraham, and the seed is the Christ. So he has Isaac, who has Jacob, and one of the 12 sons is Judah. Judah, when they come back, the tribe of Judah, when they come back out of Egypt, they locate themselves and settle in Jerusalem. Their boundary was to the Mediterranean and Egypt, and also to the Jordan on the east and the Negev in the south. And so that was the settlement of the tribe of Judah. So from the time the land of Judea, hence the word Judah or Judean, the relation. So if you are Judah, from the tribe of Judah, you are called a Judean, hence the Jew. Now, Jew is not a religion. It's an ethnicity. I'll get to that in a second. So, once they're settled in the land, 1390 BC, coming in with Joshua, they settle there in Jerusalem, the tribe of Judah. In 722, the Assyrians come along in Israel, and they take the 10 tribes away to exile. Judah remains in Jerusalem. The Jews remain in Jerusalem. Again, they are Negro Arabs, black folk, dark-skinned Arabs. So next comes Babylonians in 607, Nebuchadnezzar. He leaves a remnant of Jews in the land. They remain until the Persians come along also in 539 BC. They're still Jews in the land. And then also Alexander the Great. He comes along 331 BC. He even comes to Egypt and establishes a city there, Alexandria, with a great library. Alexander, still there are Jews in Palestine, in Judea, in Jerusalem. They're still there. In the time of the Romans, 168 BC. Even the Romans themselves, they call that the province of Judea, the Judean province. There's still Jews there in Jerusalem. Jesus the Christ comes. The Romans are ruling over everybody. There's Jews in the land. Black Arabs, Negro Arabs. 70 AD, Titus comes along, destroys everybody, destroys the temple. There's still Negro Arabs in the land, the Palestinians. 135 AD, the Romans decide to rename Judea, Jerusalem, Palestine. They give it a new name, Palestine. So the land of Judea, it becomes Palestine from then on. But Jews are still in the land. The Palestinians are still in the land. Genetically Jews, black Arabs. And then we go all the way down in the history and we come along in 600 AD. The Vatican sends the Muslims over there. Yes, the Vatican sends the Muslims into Jerusalem because the Vatican wanted the Muslims to conquer Jerusalem for them, but the Muslims decided to keep it for themselves, and they built a mosque on the Temple Mount, insulting the Vatican. God is funny that way. And so, and so the Muslims convert some of the Palestinians, which are genetic Jews, to Islam, but they're still genetic Jews. We go down in history, 1099, the Vatican again sends the Knights Templar to Jerusalem. They're still Jews in the land. Oh, and then we go also again down in history, 1516, the Ottomans. They come to Jerusalem. They're still Jews in the land, genetic Jews. 1917, the British come to Jerusalem to conquer it on behalf of the Vatican and the Rothschilds. They're still Jews in the land, the Palestinians that we see being killed today. So, again, you can trace the bloodline of the present-day Palestinians, the Jews, the true Jews, all the way to the Christ. To Christ as their big brother, to Solomon and King David, and all the way to Judah himself. So that is the true Jew. There is no white Caucasian Jew. There is no European Jew. Historically, genetically, ethnically, and most importantly, geographically, Judea, Palestine, Jerusalem belongs only to the Palestinian, the true Jew. It does not belong to a white Caucasian label of any kind. There is no white Jew anywhere. There is no white Jew. There is no European Jew. It does not exist. It's a lie, because being a Jew is genetic. It's ethnic. That's it. DNA proves today that the Palestinians that are being massacred by Netanyahu, they are the true Jews who genetically and geographically belong to the land. Netanyahu is a European. He is not a Jew of any kind. He's a Zionist. Now, white Jews do not exist at all. So let me explain the difference between the Jew and Judaism, because there's a difference there. They're not the same. Being a Jew is ethnic. It is your race. It is your tribe from Judah, a black Negro. That's it. That's what being a Jew is. Now, Judaism is a religion, just like Christianity, just like Islam, because you can be European and be in Judaism. You can be Chinese and be in Judaism. That does not make you a Jew. It just makes you believe in Judaism, right? You can be Chinese and be a Christian. You can be European and be a Christian, you see. So now, when we trace again the ethnicity of these folks, the Jews in Palestine, even historically, you see that Jew is ethnicity, and they had in their history 4 religions. Number 1, Judaism, which they believe in the Tanakh, the books of Moses and the prophets and the writings, right? So, and then Jesus comes along, then Christianity is born. The same ethnic, genetic Jew believed in Judaism and also Christianity, which was Paul and the disciples. And then you also have Zionism, still by ethnic Jews at the time who were the rabbis, not the general population. It was mainly the thing of the rabbis, Zionism, where they have their own book, the Talmud. Christianity has its book, the Bible. Islam has its own book, the Quran, because these are all religions, you see. So those are the different religions of the same ethnic Jew, including Islam that later came in the 600s. So in Palestine, there's the Christian, there's the Judaism, there's the Islam, and there are some Zionists that believe in the rabbi's teachings. Now, but that doesn't make them Jew because of believing in Zionism. It doesn't. Zionism is a religion. It's not an ethnicity. Jew is an ethnicity. I'm trying to hammer this point home. That Judaism is a religion. Jew is a descendant of Judah, the Palestinian from Jerusalem in the vicinity of Judea. Okay, so now let's trace back this corruption that came with Zionism and this fake Jew thing. Oh, it's a long history, but I'll shorten it. Very short. Now, we go back to Egypt. In Egypt, the people of God come out. You have Moses and Aaron. Moses goes up to the mountain to God. Aaron remains down there, and he builds a calf with this to Baal, to worship Baal with the people. You see the corruption of the priesthood right there, even though Aaron was given the task of being a guardian to the law of Moses. And then the corruption continues with his sons. Who are they? Nadab and Abihu. Instead of going to the temple and doing the things to God, they insert their own, smoking weed or whatever, adding to the incense of God and corrupting it, and God kills them. Rightly so. They insulted God. And so the Levites come into the land of Canaan when the people settle there. They were the Levites and the priests were the guardians of the law. So they had to interpret the law to the people, and they had to adjudicate cases, be judges, between folks who are contesting certain things. Now, these guys, because of that, the Levites and the priests, they became more powerful, very powerful. And with that power came a lot of corruption, such that, in business, they would corrupt the Sabbath and open for business on the Sabbath instead of worshiping God on the Sabbath and closing down everything. And then when it came to adjudicating cases, they would favor the rich guy and cast out the widow or the poor orphan because they couldn't bribe them. They had nothing to bribe with. So they were taking bribes. And also with the rituals, they were corrupt there as well. And you see this with Hophni and Phinehas, the sons of Eli, the priest. And God kills them. These guys were sleeping with the women in the tabernacle. Such corruption. And so God kills them, and rightly so, So you see this continue even after the folks go to Babylon and come back to the land of Judea. And they have a new class now called the rabbis. Before it was the priests and the Levites. Then they have a new class now, which are called the teachers of the law, which was the rabbis. Now, to be a rabbi, you didn't have to be a Levite. You could be anybody walking off the street, go bribe another rabbi, and then you have a recommendation. Hey, this guy is a rabbi. You subscribe. You pay a subscription. And they call you a rabbi. And so these folks had their book, which was the Talmud, which is a commentary or corrupt thoughts of these rabbis. They put in a book. They comment all the way from the books of Moses to Malachi. And and they're very arrogant and very defiant to spiritual things, especially the things of God. And they're very satanic. And this is the same guys that Jesus deals with when he comes. He says to them, you teach for doctrine the commandments of man and instead of the commandment of God. Because these guys taught from the Talmud, and that's what they really do in the Talmud. They want God to subscribe to the opinions of man, essentially the rabbis themselves. And Jesus also accuses them, and he says, you guys, you go and you find somebody to convert into your religion, and you make him twice the son of hell as you are, because the Talmud is very satanic. It is very satanic. Now, in 70 AD, what happens is Titus the Roman, his father was Vespasian, the emperor at the time in Rome. Vespasian was the emperor, and his son Titus was the general. So Titus comes to Jerusalem, destroys the temple, takes about 12,000 slaves, Jewish slaves to Europe. to Rome, and they built the Colosseum, and eventually they're also killed in the same Colosseum that they built as slaves in honor of Vespasian. So that's very ironic, to build something that you're going to die in. But there's still Jews that remain in Jerusalem, as I mentioned before. Now, along with the dispersion that goes to Europe, there are rabbis in there who teach the Talmud. They don't teach the Tanakh. They teach the Talmud. And so they find converts in Europe. A lot of white folks, European folks, convert to Talmudism or Judaism, which is the same thing. So the religion is Zionism. The book is the Talmud. Just like Christianity has the Bible, Islam has the Quran, and Judaism has the Tanakh. So now, in Zionism, there's a lot of converts in Europe, and they steal the identity of the Jew. They steal the identity of the Jew and prescribe to themselves all the benefits of being a Jew, of being the people of God, but they don't subscribe to Yahweh. They don't submit themselves to Yahweh. They don't subject themselves to Yahweh, but they continue this thing. And so eventually you have a lot of white folks becoming rabbis in Zionism, teaching the Talmud, and which is far from the law of Moses, is very far. So now, eventually, in this Zionism conversion that happens in Europe, you eventually find the Ashkenaz Jews and even the family of the Rothschilds, who are eventually become friends with the Vatican and bankers of the Vatican. And this movement of Zionism, they come up with a Freemason symbol called the Star of David. Now, David himself had no star. The true King David had no star. But these guys, because they're satanic, they use the Freemason symbol, the compass and the square, and add a couple of lines there to come up with the Star of David. That's how they came up with it. And so it's a religious political movement. They officially came together in 1897 and established it to say, hey, listen, we're getting kicked out of everywhere. Why don't we find a place of our own, a country of our own? And so they picked, because they already stole the identity of the Jew, they picked Judea, Palestine, Jerusalem. Now, that aligned very perfectly with the agenda of the Vatican. So the Vatican endorsed them and said, when you get the land, you will give me the Temple Mount where the temple is going to be, and I will be the Antichrist there. You see, that's the Vatican play in the Rothschilds and the Zionists going to Palestine, Judea, to Jerusalem. And so these guys are so satanic and so evil, they were kicked out of pretty much every country they've been in in Europe. All the kings didn't like them. Yeah, they were, and the way they're so satanic, their consciences are so seared. They're very wicked, even in their rituals, and even they're an occult. Like I said before, like the popes, they want God to be subject to their opinions in the Talmud, and they support things like intercourse with infants. Yes, that is graphic. But I want you to get a picture of who Netanyahu is and his Zionism movement. And they support the killing and raping and robbing and lying to further their agenda at all costs, which is similar to the oath that is taken by the Jesuits at the Vatican. So, but the Zionists are the same way. And they call the rest of us the Goyim. We are like animals to them. So, and they propose that we should be serving them, that it's their God-given right for every human being to serve the Zionists, these fake Jews. Now, that mentality comes, you see it in the Nazi regime, right? You see it in the Nazi regime, that they're superior than everybody else. Now, what people don't catch a lot is Zionism was part of the government of Hitler in Nazi Germany. So there are two words in Nazi. There is nationalist, German Nationalist Party, which was Hitler's, and then there was the Zionist movement that joined with the nationalists. So you have the NA from nationalist and you have the ZI from Zionism. So nationalists and Zionists ruled Hitler's Germany. And that's why they were killing all the Jews in the concentration camps, because the Zionists actually loathe the true Jew. They actually do. And that's why they're killing the true Jews right now in Palestine. But I'll get to the implications of that as well. Now, so this is how much they actually hate the Christ, the true Messiah, Jesus the Christ. They say, the Zionists, they say in their Talmud and stuff that Jesus is actually in hell right now, burning in feces. That is gross. But that's how much they hate him. That's how much they hate the Son of God. And that's how much they hate Yahweh himself. So they are not the people of God. And they're just hijacking an identity and then trying to steal the land of Palestine from the true Jews. So now, in the movement of Zionism, they established it 1897. They already stole the identity of the true Jew. And so now they had to steal the land, Jerusalem, Judea, Palestine. And the only way to do that is by ethnic cleansing. Just like the Americans came to America, the Europeans came to America and cleansed the land of the native Indian. They did an ethnic cleansing of the native Indians. And so now they're doing it again in the Middle East. So from 1917 with the Balfour Declaration, they came after that and just started wiping out all the Palestinians, the true Jews. And that has been called the Nakba, which is tragedy or disaster. And they've killed to date approximately 220,000 Palestinians over the course of time, ethnically cleansing them, right? So that's a lot of people dead from Netanyahu's folks, from the Zionists of Europe. And these guys are not Jews. God never gave them the land. They don't even believe in God, you know? They're sick. They're very sick. Now, what then is happening is there are three reasons why the Zionists went to Palestine, right, to Jerusalem, why they invaded the place and they're taking it over. There are three reasons. So number one is the Vatican. They want the Muslim mosque to be gone so that a new temple is built there and the Antichrist will move, the Antichrist Pope will move to the new temple in Jerusalem and replace Christ in the temple. Because you remember in the days of Jesus Christ, he came there and he said, do not make my father, the second temple, he said, do not make my father's house a house of thieves, when they were, you know, trading in the temple there. And he made a whip and drove him out. And so, and Paul prophesies about that in 2 Thessalonians, that the Antichrist will go to the new temple in Jerusalem and sit there as God, showing himself to be God. So the Vatican has an interest in that they want to place an Antichrist Pope in the new temple once it's built in Jerusalem. And the Zionists are working with the Vatican, funded by the Rothschild. Now, the Rothschild is the funder of the whole project, including the blackmails of the American politicians and buying them out, you know. It's insane. So that these politicians can be compromised by the Zionists, the Mossad, CIA of Israel, to manipulate America, the Rottweiler, to go to war on behalf of the Chihuahua in the Middle East. And Americans have nothing to do with the Middle East. All these wars are on behalf of Israel. So, and because the politicians in Congress and the presidents, all the way back to Bush Sr. All these guys, you will see them in their pictures go to the wall in Jerusalem with the hat thing of the Zionists to the wall there to pay their homage because now they work for the Zionists. All of them, Obama, even our current president himself, they all work for the Zionists. Congress works for the Zionists. You cannot criticize the Jew, otherwise, hey, something bad gonna happen to you, But I'm a prophet. I've been called to do that. I'll do it. So now that was the first reason. The Zionists, the Vatican they want to go to be in Jerusalem in the new temple as an Antichrist. The second reason is the Zionists themselves, because they have stolen the identity of the Jew, they need land. So they've hijacked the prophecy of the Jews that God gave them the land all the way from the Mediterranean to the Euphrates. So now they're trying to conquer the whole Middle East using America for their wars, to conquer the whole Middle East so that they can occupy that whole land as Zionists and subject everybody to Zionism, and the whole world works for the Zionists according to their mentality. So, and they want to ethnically cleanse Gaza, which they're doing, so they can put their lavish resorts for the elites. They're calling it a Gaza Strip Riviera. These people are wicked. Now, the third reason that the Zionists are going there, killing all the Palestinians, the true Jews, is because of this, and this is very important for people to understand. There's a Jewish prophecy, I mentioned it earlier in Isaiah chapter 11, that says that the Messiah will come first and then conquer the whole land and then establish a kingdom of righteousness. And then the people of God will then return and do a pilgrimage to Jerusalem to the Messiah, the Jewish Messiah. Now, here's what's more important. The Jewish Messiah in the Jewish prophecy is a direct bloodline descendant lineage of King David himself. Now, who else in earth is a direct bloodline lineage to King David? The Palestinians in Gaza, the same ones that were in Jerusalem this whole time. And so in order for the Zionists and the Vatican to prevent that prophecy from happening, they're ethnically cleansing the Palestinians, the true bloodline Jews, genetic, DNA, authentic Jews. They're killing them by the numbers because the prophecy says it will be a bloodline from King David, the Messiah. The Messiah will be a bloodline from King David. And so that is possible with the Palestinians that are there today. That's why they're trying to kill all of them and get rid of all of them. Now, this is a repetition of something that happened in Scripture. When Moses was born, the Pharaoh, to prevent a prophecy from happening, he goes and kills everybody. He kills all the babies in the time of Moses. Jesus comes along. Herod, finding out that Jesus is also a prophesied king, he goes and kills all the babies in the vicinity of Jerusalem. The Vatican and the Zionists, they find out that the Messiah will be a Jew from the bloodline of David, which is the Palestinians. Now they are killing all the Palestinians because one of them is possibly the next Messiah, according to their understanding. Now, I am not saying that the next Messiah, the Jewish Messiah, will be a bloodline from the Palestinians. But that's what the Zionists and the Vatican believe. Therefore, they are committing this genocide and ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians. The Messiah is none other than Yeshua the Christ. And he will come the second time from heaven to take us to heaven and be with him for eternity. Now, Since I'm close to being at an hour in this video, let me cut this right here for now. And next time I will talk about the prophecy that's being fulfilled now, and then talk about Daniel 9 and this war between Israel and Iran, the relation between Daniel 9 and this war. And also then clarify or lay out step by step how we get to World War III and beyond. So I will do that in the very next segment, part 2 of this. Now, thank you for taking the time to watch and listen. Remember to like and subscribe and get the book. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ be with you. I will see you in the next segment. Thank you.